Hello everyone, thank you for joining us on this edition of The Inside on Equinoxe Television. I am Babla Jonathan. According to Article 66 of the Constitution of the Republic of Cameroon, the President of the Republic, his ministers, members of the two houses of Parliament, high-ranking officers, elected office holders have a duty to disclose their assets at the beginning and at the end of their office or tenure. This article was designed to bring about transparency and to further enhance the fight against corruption and embezzlement of public funds. The second and current president of the Republic of Cameroon, Paul Biya, has said over the years that he is committed to eradicate corruption. Institutions like the National Anti-Corruption Commission and the Supreme State Audit were created and have been functioning, and an operation codenamed Operation Sparrowhawk put in place. But to date, Article 66 of the Constitution has really never been implemented. Thus, many observers say that the Constitution of the Republic is being flouted by those who are supposed to see to it and make sure that it is complied with by Cameroonians, including their leaders. And in a recent statement, a former member of the government of the Republic of Cameroon, Gaga Aman Aji, president of the Alliance for Democracy and Development, ADD political party, said the non-implementation of Article 66 of the Constitution of the Republic is synonymous to crime against humanity. How true is this? We are going to examine this in this edition of The Inside. Meet our guest in some few seconds. Our guest today is a senior political scientist, a former member of the government of the Republic of Cameroon, Professor ELVIS NGOLE. Thank you for joining us in this edition of The Inside.
Thank you, Mr. Babila, for having me, and look forward to a very rich exchange.
Right, before we get into the focus, the main focus of the program today, which is Article 66 of the Constitution of the Republic, I want to get your reaction to some of the recent happenings in the crisis-stricken northwest and southwest regions of the Republic of Cameroon. Earlier this week, the town of Bamenda, headquarters of the northwest region, was quite hot, so to speak, with gunshots in several parts of the town. Around Hospital Roundabout, around Travelers Junction, and other areas. And this is what has been happening in not only in Bamenda but in many other parts of the two English-speaking regions, where killings have continued, destruction of properties have continued, houses burnt down, people abducted, and many other atrocities committed allegedly by elements of the National Armed Forces on one hand, some of them, and on the other hand by some suspected non-state armed group actors. And these things have been continuing, violence continuing, atrocities, violations of human rights, abuse of human rights continuing, and some of them are being documented by right organizations like Human Rights Watch and the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa. What's your take about the actual situation on the ground and all of these things that have been highlighted, violations of human rights, abuse of human rights in the two English-speaking regions of the country?
Yes, Mr. Babila, frankly speaking, you're asking a question to someone who comes from one of the two regions. I come from Kupe-Maninguba division in the southwest region.
One of the areas where
there have been, armed attacks by these separatist groups, and but thankfully, at least in Kupe-Maninguba division and in some other parts of the southwest region, the situation has been calming down. Yet we recognize that there are still armed attacks here and there every once in a while. What you've just mentioned, talked about with regard to Bamenda.
The situation in the Kupe-Maninguba division precisely, is it?
It is improving. From all indications, the situation in Kupe-Maninguba in terms of armed attacks by separatist groups has improved a great deal, and in fact, proof is that we will soon be down there within the framework of the activities or operations of the CPDM party to restructure the basic organs of our party in our division, just like it's the case in all the other 57 divisions. So we're going to be there, and our people, to a large extent, continue to live in Kupe Maninguba division because our people believe in peace, and we believe that no matter how hungry someone is, no matter how aggrieved someone is, the best way to solve any problem and every problem is not to attack people, not to destroy, not to create violence. It is to dialogue, to talk with each other, to try to find common ground. This is the mentality of the typical Kupe Maninguba person.
Globally speaking, away from the Kupe Maninguba division, globally speaking, as far as the two English-speaking regions are concerned, so many atrocities are still being recorded and documented by right organizations. Not
as many as there used to be. I think any human rights organizations or any associations, be they whatever, who document increasing numbers of instances of attacks or abuses with respect to Kupe Maninguba division, I think that would be outright propaganda because and false, because we from Kupe Maninguba, who are natives of Kupe Maninguba, we live, we dream, we sleep Kupe Maninguba by the second, by the minute, by the hour, by the day. And these organizations that move around and give themselves whatever labels they want to give themselves, sometimes they make reports that do not reflect the true picture. I'm not saying that they are wrong in their existence. I'm not saying that they are wrong in whatever activities they carry out, but believe you me, they are human beings like any other human beings, and they can be wrong. And believe you me, but in certain instances, they are wrong.
This is what government and those who are close to government, the recent statement of the spokesperson of the Ministry of Defense said what you're just saying now. And this is what government has been saying over the past 4 years, that the crisis has been on. And from all indications, information from the inhabitants of those areas, those who are on the ground, keep indicating that the situation is not improving as much as you seem to be indicating.
No, if you go to Kupe Maninguba division, and I invite you to come with us when we go, and we always go. You will see for yourself, and you will be free to talk to anybody, and with the exception of certain areas, which is normal. I'm not saying that the entire Kupe Maninguba, nothing is going on. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that if you look at the situation from 2016 to now, you'll see that there has been a lot of effort has been made towards appeasement, and a lot more people are seeing the situation as one that is coming to an end because, first, people are tired. People have suffered enough. People don't like violence. And people are not interested in killings and destroying innocent people. People are fed up and tired. We are committed to ensuring that we support and we accompany the state of Cameroon and the head of state and the government of Cameroon to ensure that we rid ourselves of these evil acts, these acts that are intended to destroy not only human life, which is sacrosanct, but destroy a future which is meant to be great and bright for our country.
It is said by those who have a mastery of crisis, solving of crisis, that there can be no peace, there can be no solution to a crisis without justice. But there are many reports indicating that human rights violations are not being punished. Many are not even reported. The bomb incident in the southwest region of the country was only reviewed by Human Rights Watch about 1 year after, and the people are still waiting for justice. Victims of and survivors of the Ngarbu massacre are still waiting for justice. Victims of many such incidents is still waiting for justice, and even victims of the 2008 hunger strike in Cameroon still waiting for justice. Why is this aspect neglected?
In a society or in a state which was built, founded upon constitutional values, in a state which was founded upon democratic values, in a state which was founded upon republican values, justice and equity are issues that are hot, they are issues that are always current, and there are issues that are concerning to everyone. And as important as these issues are, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that as long as the state is founded upon constitutional values, republican values, democratic values, and that is the case with Cameroon, yes, we should keep talking about these issues, but we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that the hope, the solution to all the issues that concern justice, issues that concern equity, can only be found, the solutions can only be found within the framework of the Constitution, of the values of the Republic, and of the principles of democracy. So it is, you've made instances, you've described instances here, which are instances of justice, but this is what those who talk a lot about it keep losing sight of. The state of Cameroon, because it is a state that is founded upon democratic, republican, and constitutional values, does not shy away, has not shied away from tackling these issues. But we shouldn't forget, people keep forgetting that there are people who are violating justice and equity, such as armed groups that are unconstitutional and illegal, such as citizens and individuals who sponsor, encourage, and finance armed attacks. Nobody. These people who talk about the issues of justice and equity seem to ignore that. And that is my problem with some of these reports. Because, I mean, I follow, I'm pretty informed, and I'm pretty alert as to current affairs. Lots of these associations and organizations that you mentioned about, you call their names, yes, they are organizations that have a raison d'etre, because we are in a republic, we're in a democracy, and we are a constitutional republic, but they are associations and organizations made up of human beings like you and I. Yes, they too are prone to error. Yes, but if they are wrong, they should accept.
The question is, why are those who are committing or allegedly committing those atrocities not being punished according to the law?
No, I mean we've known instances where once these cases have gone through the right,
some few cases like that of Ngarbu,
you shouldn't
which
give
is
up.
Still in court.
More cases should come up,
which has been pulling on and on.
Sure, I mean, justice doesn't depend on you and I. Eh? Justice depends on those who the men and women who are known to be in that field, who do a great job. So I cannot talk about things in justice, but what we know, the record we know, is that the state of Cameroon, once these cases have come up and they're made public and have gone through the judiciary, the state of Cameroon has been known to have rendered justice by punishing those officials or those officers who have been judged to be guilty of having committed crimes which are illegal. I mean, that's the record. You know this, that cases have gone to court and officers and officials have been punished. But what these organizations do not do, and that's where I think they are biased and they are wrong, is that they are so passionate. They are so I don't know what is to call it. They are so blind to the fact that whenever and wherever issues of justice or issues of equity have been trampled upon, issues of human rights, by armed groups, by persons who are in outright illegality, nobody says anything about it. Look at all these people who are financing the armed attacks in Cameroon.
The last report of Human Rights Watch, say about them? The last report on Human Rights Watch provides details on atrocities committed by non-state armed groups.
They call it that. That's a nice way of saying that, armed groups.
In the two English
they give
regions.
A very nice word.
And in the last report of the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa, there is also this aspect of atrocities committed by non-state armed groups and the soldiers on the other side, the Republican soldiers. And there is also condemnation coming from these organizations. Even the civil society leaders from Stand Up for Cameroon, Emond Davini, and all those organizations who have vehemently condemned and insisting on the fact that violence, guns, civilians should keep their guns down. In fact, should abandon the guns, because violence is not going to solve the problem. But the question is, while the civilians who have committed atrocities and who are still carrying guns and running in the bushes are being pursued in operations, some known as Operation Clean Bamenda, Operation Bui, Operation this and that, are being tracked down and killed, some of them arrested. Those who are committing atrocities on the other side, on the camp of the soldiers, the regular soldiers, many of them are not being punished. Just some few, like the case of Garbo, which is still in court.
It's in court.
They're not being punished. That
no,
is
obviously, when the court process will be over,
is that not an impediment to the process of political solution?
No, it is not. I mean, the justice. Don't forget that we have to be quite honest with ourselves, and we have to be sometimes less passionate. The tendency is that civil society actors tend to be more activist than ordinary. You know, we have to sometimes in our activism learn to be a little less passionate and be a little more ordinary, natural, objective, rational. This is where I think they are wrong, because you are mentioning cases, for example. We know it's a matter of record that the state of Cameroon, through the declarations and the voice, the speeches of the President of the Republic, who is our constitutional head of state and President of the Republic, has said time without number that these armed groups should drop their arms, and that is like they are pardoned, it's like an amnesty, and that no judicial pursuits, no legal or criminal pursuits will be levied against them. I think that you cannot have any more I mean, how much more peaceful can somebody be when somebody makes that sort of declaration? It's still current, by the way. It is not yet expired.
Prof,
but then at the same time,
what is stopping those young people from responding to the call?
No, obviously, those young people, they are not responding because they are irrational. They become passionate. They are being financed and being manipulated.
Those who have responded, they are there in the DDR centers.
Yes.
But recently, some of them were on the streets in Boya and in Bamenda protesting about poor living conditions, unfulfilled promises.
If they feel like they're not being given enough food or enough to drink, or they're being deprived of something, I think they have expressed their freedom, and you notice that nobody...
the Prime Minister has to dispatch envoys.
Exactly.
The
government responded. The government responded to show you that the government is a government of tolerance. The government is a government of compassion. The government is a government of feeling. The government is a government that cares, that's caring, and that is why they responded, to show that if you don't feel good, you are free to express it, but in expressing it, you don't have to break the law, you don't have to kill somebody, you don't have to destroy public property or private property.
But
you don't have to do that, because that's not the solution.
But the question that some people are now asking, some observers are now asking, but where is the management of the DDR centers? Why is it that it's the Prime Minister who is coming in to give some millions and so on? I know maybe the President of the DDR Center should be the right person to answer this question.
I'm sure the officials of the DDR centers know what to do better than I do. I suspect that, because, I mean, what the DDR is a state structure. It is created by the state and through the arm of the government of Cameroon. And I think that the officials who have been appointed are men and women, some of whom we know. I mean, the national coordinator is someone we know to be an able administrator who has a mastery of what administration is. And I'm sure that whatever problems came up have been corrected. I'm sure, and I think that the young men and women who are there, I'm sure they would say that something has been done in that right. But what I wanted to say
some of the challenges highlighted by the leaders of that commission is about reintegrating some of those
into the normal mainstream
society, which is a little difficult now, according to them, because of the fact that peace has not yet returned. So they cannot send them back to the society in the northwest and southwest regions to start back life afresh. But does that not corroborate with the opinion expressed by some Cameroonians that the creation of the GDR before the end of the conflict was like putting the cat before the horse?
No, I think people who make that case, I've read that case. You know, DDR centers have been created in other countries before. I think different countries use different formula. It doesn't mean that there's one formula that you can use. You can use a mixture of formulas. The bottom line is that look at the intentions. The intentions of the state of Cameroon and the government of Cameroon was what? That with the olive branch the president has offered to these young men and women, because these young men and women in the bushes are the children of the president. They are our children, they are our brothers and they are our sisters. That these young men, who when they come to reason will realize that their father, the president of the republic, the head of state, has decided that in spite of the past, what they have done in the past, he's willing to forget, to forgive, and to reconcile them with their own fatherland, their own country. Once they drop their arms, they should go to the centers where they will be taken care of. Now, we should allow this situation to work out itself. The difficulties that you may have is that some of them are still in the bush because some of them are still being manipulated by these individuals who, most of whom are abroad. But I think that eventually, as we are beginning to see all over, a good number are beginning to see that even the population is tired of these armed attacks, and the population is tired of having their sons and their daughters spending time and their lives in the bushes. And I hope that people will see in the president's olive branch as a path to a solution, and those who continue to create problems and making it difficult for peace to come, to return, are not helping themselves, and they are not helping their country. They are not even helping their friends who have left the fighting in the bush. They're helping nobody. I think they're only destroying their future. My own take is that whatever problems they might confront in the DDR centers are normal problems of management and administration, and I have every reason to believe that the officials that have been appointed, knowing very well that it's a government decision, it's a governmental option, and it's a commitment by the head of state, they'll do everything possible to fix the problems as far as management of the centers is concerned.
You said that the head of state is ready to pay the price for peace because he's bigger for peace. But why is the call for negotiation between the government and the leaders of the separatist movement? There are many calls asking that these negotiations should take place on a neutral ground. For example, in Ghana, this is what some of the people are saying. Why is this call tarrying to happen?
No, Mr. Babila, I think that Cameroonians, we are all Cameroonians, and we have to be as ordinary and as faithful and as honest as we can be. Look, the word negotiations is not a Cameroonian word. It's an English word we all studied from primary school, secondary school, and university. And there's nothing magical about negotiation. Negotiation simply means, you can open any dictionary, it's a process of exchange or interaction or talk in order to solve a problem or problems. And that, I am using the words carefully, it's a process. It can happen in one day, just like it can happen in 100 days. What makes the difference between negotiations and something which is not, talks which are not negotiations, is that in negotiations, there is a purpose. In negotiations, there are willing actors. In negotiations, there is a sense of mutual appreciation. In negotiations, prejudices are kept aside, biases are kept aside. And negotiations take different forms. They can be formal or informal. They can be eventful and non-eventful. The bottom line is that for negotiations to be meaningful, they have to be purposeful. They have to be made up of people, actors who are willing to arrive at a conclusion. They have to be made up of people who are rational, who are honest, who appreciate each other.
Those who are fighting to or obtain or get a restoration of the independence of former British Southern Cameroons are saying that they're ready to talk with the government on a neutral ground, for example. But it will appear, in their opinion, that the head of state and his government are not ready for that. And some government members have said that government cannot sit on the same table with people who are with terrorists. With those terms, terrorists referring to...
No, you began by question. I wanted to know why negotiations are not... but I'm seeing that you're using a phrase there, those who are for the restoration of independence. I mean, I think that's the most ridiculous thing anybody can say. I'm saying from the standpoint of political science, I'm not... From a political science point of view, for any Cameroonian to come up and say that he stands for restoration of independence of the Southern Cameroons, has Southern Cameroon ever been independent? Has Southern Cameroon ever been a sovereign state? Never, ever. No history. And you can quote, I prefer to quote Professor Julius Ngo, who is a historian, and others. You can quote the historians at the United Nations, in Britain, in France, in America. There is no, in Germany. Southern Cameroons has never been a sovereign independent state.
Let me finish now. Its independence let me complete. Joining the former Republic.
In political science,
that's how it got its
This is why I'm not talking political science. No. I'm not talking about lawyers who talk every day.
They were separate territories.
In political science, you can never be independent in the independence of someone else. It's almost like a child in the womb of the mother cannot say he or she is already born. You are not born. It's the same thing in political science. This is logic. In fact, it's even common sense that the framers of the questions during the plebiscite were men and women who were qualified. They knew what they were doing. Now, see, Mr. Babila, if you really believe that the 1961 plebiscite was intended or gave independence, sovereign independence to, quote, Southern Cameroons, why is it that...
by joining
no, let me finish. Let me finish my question. Why is it that the British Northern Cameroons has never made the same claim? Because that plebiscite and the same question referred to British Northern Cameroons equally. Those people who make a lot of noises about restoring Southern Cameroons, they keep forgetting that the 1961 plebiscite was not limited to British Southern Cameroons. It was also applicable and included British Northern Cameroons. Same question, same plebiscite, same conditions, but the effect or the consequences are that with British Northern Cameroons,
they joined Nigeria.
They are Nigerian, and I don't quarrel with that. I don't want to talk about history. They are Nigerians.
And
they
the
have never
Cameroons
claimed. But British Southern Cameroons,
came to
those who make noises about restoring, what are they restoring? They're restoring nothing. They are restoring what? In short, it's such a falsehood. You don't restore what you've never had.
You restore what was existing before.
What was existing before was not sovereign independence.
No, about
you were a territory of under a trusteeship territory.
A trusteeship territory.
But that's not sovereignty.
Why is negotiation? Why is government not ready for negotiation?
Let me answer the question very simply. Is this: the negotiations are ongoing, except that they are not ongoing in the way that you and I may think about it, because the negotiations are done between a sovereign state which has full powers of sovereignty, the state of Cameroon, of which you and I are part. And those individuals, that group of individuals that has decided, for whatever reason, to contest or to challenge or to defy that state by insisting that they want to succeed from that state and going even to the extent of taking up arms against the laws, against the constitution of that state. But what makes it difficult, if you want to say, because you've asked that question, why is it difficult? This is why it is difficult. It is difficult because, one, some actors, and in this case, the armed groups and their mentors who are either abroad or somewhere hiding their coats within the country, don't want to give up their arms, don't want to give peace a chance, and don't want to understand that in the process of talks or finding common ground, in the process of exchanging ideas, in the process of exchanging proposals and counter proposals, the two main actors are, on the one hand, a sovereign state called the state of Cameroon, which is the land of their fathers and their mothers, and their group, the armed group, which is a breakaway or what you call, they call it separatist or secessionist group of individuals who think that they are right to succeed from their motherland or their fatherland. Let me just tell you, as a political science, in the history.
In a nutshell, Prof, you're saying that they should put down the guns.
I think so, very well.
And give in to...
And give peace a chance.
To the process
and continue to express themselves.
All right, Prof, we're going to take a look at what the newspapers reported this week. Immaculate Fogwe takes us to the press review. And when we come back, we'll talk about Article 66 of the Constitution of the Republic of Cameroon. Stay with us.
The Crown, COVID-19, explosion of cases, 3,000 plus positive and 37 deaths registered in a week. Cameroon Insider reports COVID-19, resurgence, danger looms in schools. The Advocate, COVID-19 second wave, government hits hard on barrier measures. The Guardian Post says Minad Boss orders governors, senior divisional officers and divisional officers to reinforce the fight against COVID-19. The Sun, containing COVID-19 surge, Cameroonians unmoved by government's fresh push. Eden, International Women's Day in Yaoundé. Women defy government's ban on public manifestation. The Post-Weekender reports West Cameroon sitting on riches but walking in poverty. The Horizon exclaims, SAR Wednesday, alleged separatist fighters shut down the entrance into the town of Bamenda. The Guardian Post exclaims, Enyo and national shame. The Star, Cameroon Development Corporation travel ban imposed on top management. The Median questions what is really going on at the CDC after the police trailed some corporation workers. Another edition of the Guardian Post says March session of Parliament heads may roll in the Senate and National Assembly bureaus. The Post, Maximilian Gombe receives International Woman of Courage Award from the United States Embassy.
Thanks, Immaculate Fogwe, for the press review. We are still with our guest, senior political scientist, former member of the Cameroon government, Professor ELVIS NGOLE. Prof, now we're talking about Article 66 of the Constitution of the Republic. This is something that has been in the Constitution for decades and was designed to enhance transparency and the fight against corruption and embezzlement of public funds. But till date, that aspect of the Constitution is still in the drawers, so to speak.
It is not in the drawers. It is in the Constitution. Don't forget the Constitution is still alive.
Not being implemented.
Okay. I mean, it's good. I mean, my response to your question is this, Mr. Babila. We as citizens of this fatherland that we call the state of Cameroon, which is founded on constitutional, as I said, democratic and republican values, we should consider ourselves lucky, because a state without a constitution A state which is not founded upon constitutional values and principles is a state that is bound to, if not wither away, or bound to face dysfunctions and probably even implosions and explosion. But once a state begins with a founding foundation that we call the Constitution, that state is likely to solve lots of the problems. And that's where we are in Cameroon. We are lucky that we have in this country, this state of Cameroon, which is sovereign, a constitution. And this is the fourth constitution, by the way. 1960, 1961, 1972, and we are 1996. Four constitutions that we have got. In this fourth constitution, this is the best we have ever had. And we should be very lucky. And you say, this constitution has several articles, one of which is, you've just mentioned, Article 66. And the question which has to do with the question of transparency in the management of public funds or public the
President of the Republic, his ministers,
everybody
members of the lower and upper houses
elected
of Parliament,
or appointed,
elected office holders are supposed to declare their assets before and at the end.
It is a constitutional provision, we don't doubt that.
But why is it not implemented today? That's the question.
This is what I respond to you as to the question, why is it that it's not implemented? Look, constitutions by their very nature, and it doesn't matter whether you are in Cameroon or not, are such that they are documents. They are a body of, they are the collective will of the people put in a body of ideas that we call articles or preamble and other elements of a constitution. But these ideas put in that document or in those texts, because not every country has a written constitution. Britain, for example, Great Britain doesn't have a written constitution. But the mere fact that you have such texts is a good thing for the people. No matter what issue you discuss is found in the Constitution. And the Constitution carries many elements. First of all, preamble and the several articles. Article 66 is only one out of several articles. I think the number of articles is about, in our Constitution, about 70 something, if not 80 articles. These articles are living articles. They are meant to enable us to refer to them at all times. Now, in the case of Article 66, which is meant to ensure that those who are called upon, either by virtue of their appointment or their election, to manage public funds or public finances, do so with rigor and probity, you're asking, why is it not being implemented? My answer to you is that the implementation of any article of a constitution is not a question of you and I. It is also not a question of some NGO or some political party or some association. No, it is the state that has the constitutional, the very constitution, no matter what there is in the world, that gives the power and the prerogative to the state to be the authority to enforce, to legislate, and to execute. This is, all constitutions do this. And in the case of Cameroon, you're talking about Article 66. The state of Cameroon has legislated, has enforced, has executed so many measures, so many acts, so many decisions, so many institutions in place which are intended to, which revolve around Article 66. You've just mentioned a few. The CONAC,
the National Anti-Corruption
the National Anti-Corruption,
the
Supreme State Audit, the agency for the National Agency for, I think, the Financial Crimes, ANIC, I think it's called ANIC, and other judicial services or judicial police and other services, the Special Criminal Court. These are all institutions and acts of the executive branch, of the legislative branch, of the judiciary branch, which are branches, constitutional branches of government, which are all aimed, and at the same time, you shouldn't forget, don't forget yourself. The mere fact that the media, which is referred to as the fourth estate, is there, even if it's not constitutionally a constitutional branch of government, the media has a major role to play. to ensure that the intents and purposes, the spirit and the letter of Article 66 are respected or are implemented. So in a way, Article 66 is actually implemented in Cameroon without us saying so, because you have this armada of acts, institutions, and structures that have been put in place and that are doing their job, and I think they are doing their job professionally speaking. I don't have any reason to judge them and to say they are not doing their job, because I admire a lot of the work that they do. We even forgot what you call the special, the compte, they call it the coup de compte. We forget that we have a coup de compte, right? It's called administrative chamber or what?
The administrative chamber of the administrative bench of the Supreme Court.
Yes, no, the coup de compte, they are somewhere based in Hippodrome. These are men and women of substance, of integrity, who are working in the Supreme State Control, in their office, doing the work that the Article 66 is supposed to do.
These institutions have been there.
Yes.
Fighting the same fight that Article 66 was designed to fight. That is the fight against corruption and embezzlement of public funds, and also to enhance transparency in the management of public funds.
We don't disagree.
But despite the presence of these institutions and even Operation Sparrowhawk, corruption and embezzlement has been increasing, and getting deeper and deeper into the marrows of the republic. But the ministers, the president of the republic himself, the members of the lower and upper houses of parliament, and all other persons holding public office have not declared their assets till now. Not at the beginning, not at the end, for those who have already gone on retirement.
This is what I'm telling you.
Why are they not declaring their assets?
No, don't only, because I've tended to notice that those who are activists, they only want to focus on the president, the parliamentarian, this. No, the Article 66 does not only limit itself to the president. All elected and appointed officials who have to do with public,
and none of them have declared their assets.
That's what I'm trying to tell you, that the constitutional provision of the phraseology, in other words, the use of the words, declare their assets. Yeah, that word is clear. I mean, that phrase is clear. But I'm telling you that the acts, the institutions, the structures, the decisions that have been put in place since 1996 actually have been doing a good amount of that work to ensure transparency and to ensure that there's probity and there's rigor in the management of public funds. So the issuing of the formal declaration is not necessarily what's so important. What is important is that, is there probity? Is there rigor? Is there transparency? And you and I, unless you want to accuse me that I'm doing propaganda, you and I are aware that lots of efforts have been made. The President of the Republic himself has gone on record to insist on the fact that there has to be transparency, there has to be rigor in the management of public funds. CONAC is there hitting every day. The Supreme Court, the Supreme State Audit is doing its job very well. The courts are doing their job very well. The Special Court is doing its job very well, because we have men and women, because of the spirit and letter of the Constitution, and because of, and in particular, Article 66. I keep telling you, everyone is conscious of the need for transparency. But everyone is for transparency. Nobody is against transparency. And Cameroon is committed, starting with the head of state, to transparency.
Earlier, Prof, you said that those who are advocating for whatever, those who are asking for whatever justice or whatever, they have the right to do so, but they shouldn't violate the laws of the land.
Well, of course not. Nobody can.
But why are those who are in charge of implementing the laws of the land flouting the laws of the land?
No, it
by
is not
not
a violation.
declaring their assets.
No, if a constitutional disposition is not yet implemented, you have to know how constitutional provisions and other legal or statutory provisions are implemented. I keep on saying that in every political system, and again, you are talking to someone who teaches comparative political systems. In all political systems and in every political system in the world, no exception, maybe with the exception of some systems that are closed systems, such as theocratic systems, or maybe centralized or or dictatorial or tyrannical systems. But in all political systems, particularly democratic republican systems, constitutional and other statutory, legal or other provisions are always enforced. First of all, it is by the state, but secondly, they are enforced in ways that you can see, which are not necessarily in a literal manner. In the case of Cameroon, transparency is already enforced in Cameroon, because first of all, Cameroon is accessory to Transparency International, as you know. Cameroon has a local agency, national agency of transparency. Cameroon has structures in place, strict structures that have been created by the state of Cameroon or by the government of Cameroon in order to fight corruption, in order to ensure transparency and rigor and probity in the management of public affairs. It's particularly finances. Every time that a new budget is adopted and promulgated into law, you notice that the president has often mentioned there the need for probity and for rigor and for transparency.
But
this
so
has always been done, but it is not a violation, because
if all these efforts are being made by government to enhance transparency and to fight corruption and embezzlement of public funds, but these issues are still continuing, is there no link between the fact that corruption, embezzlement of public funds are still increasing in the Cameroonian society and the non-implementation of Article 66?
No, there's no link between.
Non-declaration.
There's no link. Believe you me. Anyone who says is only
office holders.
No, it's only activists who can say that. And I've noticed that there are lots of them around. I guess they're using the freedom that exists. There are too many activists, and they believe that the more activist you are, the more right you are. But there's no correlation logical between activism and being right. What I'm trying to say is that the increase in corruption is not, there's no correlation positively between the increase in corruption and the and the fact that Article 66 is still in the Constitution. It has not been taken out of the Constitution. It's still one of the articles of the Constitution, but there's no correlation between corruption and it.
If all those holding public offices were declaring their assets at the beginning and at the end of their tenure,
you think corruption will be none?
Will it not have reduced corruption in one way or the other?
Let me ask you a very simple question. I cannot say that because as far as I know, there is no correlation. But take the countries where this is done. Is there no corruption in those countries? Of course, you know there's corruption in those countries. It might be at a lower degree. People tend to use the cases of Nordic countries as examples that one can use. But not all countries in the world are like Nordic countries. But we agree that corruption is a worldwide phenomenon. That's why you have Corruption International. Yes, Corruption International, Transparency International, to fight corruption all over the world. So corruption is not a Cameroonian phenomenon. But I think that we have to appreciate that we are lucky as citizens to be in a country with a constitution which has put inside that constitution a provision to fight corruption through, which is a transparency, a pro-transparency article, which is pro-transparency and fights corruption. But one cannot say that it's being violated because it has not, first of all, it has not been taken out of the constitution, and one cannot say that there's no transparency in Cameroon or that corruption in Cameroon is because is linked to the fact that the article is there silent. No, it is, first of all, it is not silent. The article is there. It is not silent to show that the state of Cameroon is conscious of that article. All the structures, all the decisions, all the institutions surrounding that article are in place. We've just named them. They are doing their job. People are being prosecuted, adjudicated every day in Cameroon. And I think that the world is witness to this.
Almost a whole government is in detention.
Well, I don't want to say that part is what journalists would say. All I know is that the judiciary is doing its job. I'm one of those who is an admirer of the men and women of the judiciary. I believe that a country which does not have a constitutionally based judiciary risks having problems of equity and justice. But the case of Cameroon, that's not the case. Cameroon is a pro-constitutional, pro-equity, pro-justice country, and that is why these institutions, which are surrounding Article 66 of the Constitution, are in place. And the men and women who are called upon, I admire them, believe you me, to be very candid with you, they are doing their job. Whether it be there in the judiciary police, in CONAC, in the audit bench, in the special court, and in the ANIF and others, or in the coup de compte. I think these men and women, they are professional men and women who are competent, educated, experienced, and they are committed to their fatherland. They are committed. They are patriots. They know that they don't get paid that much. Don't forget. But they are working hard every day to make a better Cameroon for all of us.
Some legal minds like Barrister Liscom, some legal minds like Barrister Shu Emmanuel will tell you that in Cameroon, the executive arm of the state has swallowed the judiciary and even the legislative arm of the state with regards to the fact that at the helm of the legislative arm is I want to say that somebody who is responding to the head of state and the hierarchy and the party discipline and all of that stuff. And then at the helm of the judiciary is the head of state himself, and then seconded by the Minister of Justice, who is a member of the executive, and all of that.
No, people, maybe I should respond to that criticism of Aline Com and the others, because it's good that this is nothing new. It's normal for certain lawyers or attorneys to make that case, because they are attorneys and they are lawyers, and they don't look at, they don't understand. I don't want to say they don't understand. That is to say, they ignore the fact that the way political systems function, you have to understand the type of state system there is. You have to understand the type of governmental system there is. You have to understand the type of political system there is. It is for you to understand. We live in a country where the state is a unitary state which is decentralized. We live in a country where the governmental system is democratic and it is presidential. Some will say presidentialist. We don't live in the other forms of state or other forms of political systems. When you understand ours, generally speaking, in political systems where where it is a presidential sort of type of governmental system, and where the state, the form of state, is a unitary state, the tendency is that of the three branches, constitutional branches of government, because all governments, constitutionally speaking, are divided into three branches all over the world. Cameroon is simply among those. Cameroon follows the rule. In that sort of system, because it is a presidential system of government, and in the case of Cameroon, we even have what is a type which is called a semi-presidential system of government. That is to say, the executive powers, and the chief of the executive, constitutional executive power, is the president of the republic, who is head of state. The tendency is that because of the nature of that job and that domain, the tendency is that the powers tend to be preponderant, they tend to be very, they are seen every day, and the other branches, which are the judiciary and the legislative, tend to not be that preponderant, that overwhelming, and therefore the conclusion by certain observers is that, oh, the executive powers are overbearing, therefore they conclude that the other two branches are being... This is not only the case of Cameroon, because if you study political science in the United States, you'll get these same issues being discussed by others. In Europe, it's the same thing.
We'll take some interviews now, and we'll be right back in some few minutes.
This evening, we just issued a report on the human rights situation of the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. And this report details atrocities committed against the civilian population by the defense and security forces on one hand, and the non-state actors on the other hand. This report focuses on events from October 2020 to February 2021. And some of these atrocities include, among others, extrajudicial executions, arbitrary arrests and illegal detentions, retaliatory attacks, the use of improvised explosive devices, torture, wanton destruction of property. We also documented cases of attacks against schools and arson of homes and villages, as well as abductions and kidnappings. In the report, we also shed light on some of the actions of the international community and the recommendations on how to resolve the crisis in Cameroon, and we ended with recommendations to the stakeholders on how to ensure accountability, justice as a step towards finding a solution to the crisis in Cameroon. This report enumerated atrocities which have been affecting women and children seriously, and we gave recommendations on how the government can do to resolve the crisis in Cameroon. And one of the recommendations is the fact that there must be accountability for the crimes which have already been committed, and we commended the government for the actions they took by investigating the Ngabu massacre, which identified 3 soldiers, and these soldiers are under trial for killing at least 21 unarmed civilians. And we recommended to the government to ensure that every other atrocity that has been committed in the crisis should also be investigated, and all the perpetrators involved to be brought to book.
From the instruction that have been given by the governor of the littoral region, instructed us that to follow this activity of motor taximen inside our unity of command, and the operation that is carrying outside wants the permit of riding and the ID card, the national ID card. Some measures, actions have been taken by the government, and the action is that we want to take outside those people who don't want to follow instruction. The operation that have been carried out is to clean the sector of motor taxi. Measures and actions are being carried on to stop those motorbike riders who want to enter Bonabiri and bringing disorder. I would like to say that we are aware that some of motorbike riders are not even Cameroonians. We know it. Republic of Central Africa, Chad Republic, and so on. They want to worry us, but they will face us. As my own is concerned, that I will not accept that those people coming from outside the Cameroon come and bring disorder inside, disorder here. So we are outside. We will give all the support for those syndicats and those leaders of motor taxi to clean Bonabiri. You know that is this sector of motor taxi that they bring disorder. So we will clean Bonabiri. Those people who will not follow the rules will be cut down.
I particularly insist on the imperative need to rigorously respect the limit of 50 persons as well as safety measures during meetings, ceremonies, events, and other official or private celebrations, especially when these meetings take place in closed spaces in order to avoid the emergence of clusters. We must not lose sight of the fact that each individual protects himself and protects others. With a view to strengthening our prevention mechanism, the government, on the instructions of the head of state, has taken steps with partner organizations to acquire vaccines against COVID-19. More than 1 million doses of the vaccine will be available in the very near future. Once these vaccines become available, a vaccination plan shall be set up and vaccination shall be voluntary. I would like to note that although vaccination is voluntary and not compulsory, the government encourages all Cameroonians to be vaccinated when the time comes in order to acquire the immunity that will enable our community to protect itself against COVID-19 for a return to normalcy.
You're welcome back. Professor ELVIS NGOLE, former member of government, Gaga Aman Aji, and who is the president of the Alliance for Democracy and Development, ADD political party, says that the non-implementation of Article 66 of the Constitution of the Republic is equal to crime against humanity.
Well, you know, Mr. Gaga Aman is someone I personally respect and I admire, and I love him because he's really very, from a human standpoint, an elder that is good to listen to. He is quite human and humanist, and I think that he loves Cameroon. He loves his country. And when he makes the statement as such as the one you've just made, I am wondering whether he made them as the leader of his party, ADD, or he made them as a patriot, or he made them as, because I know he worked for Konak also. I think he's still there, if I can't recall. But as a person, as an individual, Mr. Gaga Ajiaman, he's one of those I respect a lot, believe you me. I have not lied. Anywhere I see him, you notice that if you observe, I give him all the respect because I think he's a good man. He's a patriot. He loves Cameroon. And I think that from a human standpoint, he's someone you can relate to. But to determine the crimes of humanity is not a question of a journalist like you talking or me, a political scientist talking. I don't think so. I think that in international law and international legal practice, we know that there are institutions, either the International Criminal Court or the other international courts, that have the responsibility and the mission through their own judicial processes to determine whether a crime against humanity has been committed, because these are established conventions and norms that go beyond my profession or your profession or the profession of a politician that I am, after all. One might say I'm saying so because I'm a militant of the CPDM party. No, that's not what it is. We have to be very careful that when we use some of these words, a crime against humanity, this was not something that was coined in Cameroon. It is a phraseology, it is a concept that is international, universal, and which everyone knows that for it to be established, it is established by institutions through processes that are well established, conventions, statutes that are well known. And as far as we know in Cameroon, Cameroon is not one of those countries that where crimes against humanity are committed, and therefore, because our country is a party to a lot of these conventions and these international statutes, and our country, as you know, I like to say it, Cameroon is a good pupil, a good member of the United Nations system, and Cameroon will no way, and as far as I know, our president, the head of state, is committed to respecting the United Nations Charter.
Prof,
and international conventions that the state of Cameroon is a party to.
If the Constitution,
himself
Prof,
being the exemplar of a statesman who believes in a world of peace, a world of justice, a world of equity, a world of humanism, a world of respect for human rights.
Yes,
our president is an exemplar of that.
If the Constitution is the collective will of the people, and the people accepted and said, okay, this is what we are going to do, this is how we're going to function, this is how our leaders are supposed to do this or that, and then at the end of the day, the leaders are not doing what the people agreed that should be done. Isn't it a crime against those people? Isn't it a violation of those people's will?
No, it will not be a crime, because for it to be a crime, it has to be established by a court, right? By some judicial body, which is, you know, things are not just don't just happen because we love them to happen or not. For it to be a crime, it has to be established as such by the body in charge of that. But if leaders who are elected don't do what those who elected them do, those who elected them have the constitutional right during a constitutionally guaranteed process, or within the framework of a constitutionally guaranteed process, and in the case of all republics and in all democracies, it is a democratic election. During an election, those same people, if they feel that their will or their wishes or their expectations have not been met or have not been respected, the ballot boxes is recognized in all republics, in all democratic systems, as the constitutionally guaranteed path and way to express your displeasure or your rejection of those that you think have not met your requirements. And if you were appointed, of course, he or she who appointed you has the powers, the prerogative, to appoint someone else in your place. So what those who are governed, the right they don't have is, they don't have the right to defy the laws. They don't have the right to defy the ballot box. They don't have the right to defy the norms that they've all agreed to, the norms of the republic, democratic norms and principles. They don't have a right to defy the liberties of others. Those rights, all constitutions, it's not all Cameroon, no exception, agree to this. So there is no doubt that, and I agree with you, that in certain systems, in certain instances, in certain circumstances, there are leaders, there are leaders who have either been elected or appointed, and they have not met the expectations of the people who appointed them or who elected them. Well, in a republic and in a democracy, it is internationally recognized and established that if that sort of case presents itself where the people who are governed and who gave their vote to someone to lead them are not satisfied, they use the same path, the path of the ballot box, to express their displeasure or their rejection of that person. And if the person was appointed, the person who appointed them, of course, if he doesn't know, he will be reminded or he will be informed. And he naturally will use his prerogative and his right to appoint someone else in lieu of the person who has not met the requirements. So these are established things. But what is wrong is that often some persons, either because they think they are smart, or because they have become evil, or because they have become mischievous, they ignore the ballot box, which is the law. They ignore the law. They ignore the freedoms of others. They ignore the norms and the principles and the values. They ignore all that. And what do? They become barbaric. They become wild. They make as if we are no more a society. They make as if we are in the jungle. I mean, the world has moved from jungle to society. From societies, now we have created what we call political societies, or we call political systems. You can call them republics, you can call them states, you can call them monarchies, you can give them different labels. But the world has evolved. The world has evolved away from barbarism. The world has evolved away from the jungle. The world has evolved away from bestiality, animal bestiality. We are now civilized animals. Whether you are poor or rich, whether you're educated or you're not educated, whether you have a job or you don't have a job, you are still a human being, rational, cultured, with some values, and it's expected that you behave like that. So when you decide that you are not happy, or that you are aggrieved, or that you are protesting, and then you start insulting people, but you are being bestial or being barbaric. You start violating the liberty of someone else. I mean, I can't imagine which lawyer will say that it's good that you are insulting somebody. Which lawyer will say that it's good that you are depriving someone else of his liberty. Which lawyer will say it's good that you are destroying public property or private property. I don't understand that. I mean, I have to tell you that I left Cameroon as a young man, 19 years old, to go and study law in the United States. But in the course of study, I decided I would be better off being a political scientist, doing political science and law. I could have done so. And I have no regrets for it, because I can't imagine from a moral and ethical standpoint how a lawyer can stand up and say that he who has become bestial towards someone else, he who has insulted someone else, he who has deprived the humanity out of someone else, him who has destroyed public property, that person is right. In the name of what? Where are the morals? Where are the ethics? We have to know that no society can be a society, no society can progress, no society can develop in bestiality. No society can develop in violence. No society can develop where people don't appreciate the humanity of others. And that is where the state comes in. The state is there as the arbiter, as the referee, as the epitome of compassion, of care, of feeling, is the champion of the general interest. That's the role of the state. And the state, which is founded, when a state is founded upon, is built upon the rock of what you call a constitution, that's already a good thing. And we're happy to be among those states that are built on republican constitutions. We are happy about that, because in spite of all our differences, in spite of what we may say, we may disagree every day. We shouldn't forget that for us to forge ahead, we can't afford to encourage or to accept to be bestial or to be beasts. We can't afford to be barbaric. Once we do that, we are only moving, we are making our journey towards paradise further and further away. Nobody will arrive at paradise. No society, human society, can reach a great destiny if it believes in bestiality, if it believes in barbarism, if it's inhuman, if it believes in evil. We have to avoid this. We all love each other, and we have to love each other as human beings, in spite of our political differences. That's very normal. God did not make the world to be homogeneous. It is God who created a heterogeneous world. Heterogeneity or diversity is not a fatalism. It is actually a strength. We should build on it and make sure that we use our good senses to find common ground. And I think we can do it. So I'm hoping that in the case of Cameroon, the solution to the crisis that we've had in the last 4 years plus is that those who are against negotiation, those who are against arriving at peace, should change their minds, should know that bestiality will not take us anywhere. Barbarism will not take us anywhere. They should leave the gun. Guns are not intended to negotiate. Guns are not intended to achieve happiness.
One of my guests on Talking Point said guns do not negotiate, but guns only kill. Professor ELVIS NGOLE, political scientist, former member of the Cameroon government, thanks so much for your time.
It's a pleasure again, and thank you for having me once again, and hopefully our audience, your audience, will appreciate the exchange, because at the end of the day, we are simply one another's keeper. We're just trying to be helpful and be useful to one another, and we hope that those who may not agree with what the nature of our conversation will, at least upon reflection, see that we mean well towards each other, and we hope that at the end of the day, we shall find common ground and move together, forward together.
Right. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for this edition of The Inside.